Warning. The following video is not intended for an audience under the age of 13. Do not watch the video without a guardian or parent present. That is all.
Let's see here. Who's up next on the review list? Siege Mirage! Ah, yes. Siege Mirage, will you please take your spot in the light box? Ah, perfect. Now then, if you'll give me a minute, I'm just going to take care of a few more things. Let's see here, I'm just going to grab that camera real quick. Okay, Mirage, let me just get situated here with my camera and... son of a... God. Just a damn second. Hey, Optimus? Yeah, look, I know you're busy, but Mirage just vanished from the set. Can you please tell him to get back here? What do you mean he's currently having a bratwurst? I thought that was the Maximal shtick that they ate organic food, not the Autobots. Can you please just tell him to get back here? I really need to get this review done soon. Yeah, Optimus, I get it. Fighting the Decepticons is probably harder than being a YouTuber, but I need to get up one video a week in order to keep the channel relevant. Yeah, I know, I did a bad job of it last semester, but cut me some slack. It's the first semester of college that I've ever had, and quite frankly, I'm still kind of learning here. Look, Optimus, I need to get this review done by Saturday at the earliest. So, if you wouldn't mind, can you please just tell Mirage to get back over here? You know, quite frankly, I don't give a darn if it's Ratchet's birthday. I need Mirage here and now so I can film the review.
Arrive! Time Formula!
Rumble is red, Frenzy is blue, and I'm sitting here with a toy to review. For those of you wondering why I changed the opening animation to show a picture of a crocodile head forming instead of Kamen Rider Decade's logo, it's because I do not own the rights to Kamen Rider Decade. For those of you asking why should I care about this, then congratulations, you just asked a really good question. And a good answer to that is, I don't expect you to care, I just expect you to enjoy the review. Now, we all know that the siege is largely over, but the war for Cybertron is only beginning. Yes, within the next few weeks, Earthrise will be hitting shelves, and it confusingly won't be taking place on Earth? Why'd you call it Earthrise? However, the most annoying part of this is that it kind of throws my personal theory that the third chapter of this trilogy would be Beast Wars based, but oh well, I guess no one at Hasbro cares about Beast Wars. Anyways, the figure we're discussing today was one of Siege's biggest controversies. Well, 1/3 or 1/2 of it, depending on what you consider to be a portion of the controversy. Anyways, about a year ago, Hasbro released one of their fan polls on Facebook or their app or whatever to see which toys we'd like this year, or last year technically relative to this video's posting, presenting us with 3 versus packs. The victorious pack being Mirage versus Impactor, Spinister versus Wheeljack, and of course Trax versus Needlenose. However, when they released the versus pack, it did not come with a regular Mirage, but instead a translucent blue Mirage, which is awful because translucent plastic gets really brittle. Then of course an Impactor with a nicer head, and of course the third wheel Power Dasher repaint of the Weaponizer cog, which nobody asked for, but it looks fine, to me at least. And when the individual Mirage was released, it turned out that we wouldn't escape from the translucent plastic here either, as a bulk of its legs and consequently the roof of the vehicle mode are made of translucent blue. To demonstrate why translucent plastic is a bad idea, especially when portions of limbs are made out of it, I have with me my Siege Spinister, who as of the recording of this video on Thursday is less than a week old. And look at the leg right here. You see this? Your eyes don't deceive you. That is a massive stress mark running along the side of the leg. And this thing does a little bit of transforming when I'm getting him into copter mode. On an unrelated note, the reason why I'm so mad about this figure's translucent plastic issues is because I was planning on reviewing it this June for Pride Month. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like the Buy Pride flag got dressed up as a transformer. So I was going to review it for Pride Month, but now I'm super scared that it won't even make it that long. But still, that figure demonstrates why translucent plastic is a bad idea when it makes up a bulk of a figure's parts. But that figure demonstrates exactly why a transformer shouldn't have important components made out of clear plastic. They are super brittle and will break easily. Fortunately, on this Mirage, it's not the worst, but there are a few stress marks on the clips that hold this pair of arms that become the air intakes in robot mode that look like they have stress marks. That, or it's just like a mold flash. Either way, it's not a good thing for a car or any transformer to be made mostly of translucent plastic. Other problems that I have with this mode include, well, the cockpit, or lack thereof. I mean, sure, there's a little silver stripe here underneath the blue plastic, but it's almost unnoticeable. But really, the cockpit and the lack of weapon ports on the vehicle mode are the only problems I have with it. Otherwise, things look great on this figure. We've got the nice nose front thingy with the fender mustache. I don't know what this is called. I'm not a car person, I'm an animator. We've also got a nice air intake, and while you can complain that the back of the vehicle is just a faux part, it does kinda distinguish it from a normal Earth vehicle. I mean, the spoiler on the back is a bit further up, as are the intakes, and overall, you'd be hard-pressed to say that this vehicle mode is terrible. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, there aren't nearly enough weapon ports on this figure. I mean, there are only 2 weapon ports on the back spoiler, which I guess is really all you need. I guess if you really wanted to, you could give them more combat ports with a weaponizer component or 5. Siege is trying to sell the whole weapon port thingy, and there should have been more on this mode. Speaking of the combat system, he does come with 3 weapons. A little bazooka thing, a missile, and of course this gun thingy that, I guess if you held it upright, looks kind of like a sword. And it also really does remind me of the G1 guns, except, not chromey. And if you wanted to, you could mount them on the back of the vehicle mode, like this. But I find that this weapon is a bit too loose and floppy, so I sometimes plug it in here. However, like with the Ape Face review, I tend to find that this one is a bit too loose for the pegs on the vehicle mode, so I end up putting it in here, which is nice and tight, and also put the silver missile thingy on here, which is also nice and tight and doesn't want to fall out. My one other tiny complaint is the seam line on the hood, which is really a bit more deep and obvious than it should be. A bit like the lack of art on my Twitter.
Deja vu, I've just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time to go home.
The transformation is extremely fun, and in between modes you do get this hilarious sort of robo totem pole beanstalk mode. And to demonstrate just how amusing I found this, here are a few photos I took of it. However, if we do transform him properly by folding the spine down, we will see that this is a perfectly proportionate robot mode, and very well designed. And ingeniously, the waist swivel is not removed by the transformation. Now then, this is comparatively a less stylized take on Mirage than the Classics version was attempting to create. However, there are a few positives that I think this Mirage has over the Classics Mirage. And just so you're aware, I have never owned the Classics Mirage figure, and my judgments of it are very shallow and surface level, based on its design alone. So, take all of this with a pinch of salt. Now then, before I get on with the negatives, I feel I should give the Classics figure some credit. It was different from the original, it had better painted details, and overall it wasn't trying to be super accurate to G1. However, there are a few things that this figure does better than that one does. Starting with the faux parts. Now then, the original Classics Mirage had two faux parts. One was a cockpit that formed its chest when the actual cockpit formed its back, and the second was a faux printed front bumper, which formed its crotch. The Siege figure only has one faux part, that being the chest. I will give this to the Classics figure and its faux chest. At least it didn't have leg wheels that kind of hamper posability in some instances. However, the front bumper didn't form a stupid weapon, which, speaking of weapons, it's time for my second point. Weapons. As I mentioned before, the Siege figure comes with two weapons, the shoulder-mounted rocket launcher from the cartoon, and the needle missile thingy from the toy, I think. I much prefer these weapons to the weird crossbow that was formed from the front of the vehicle mode from the Classics figure, which I will pass off as possibly being engineering problems for the time. Probably couldn't have engineered that to transform into the actual waist. But still. The weapons look far more convincing on this figure than they do on the Classics figure. Now then, the third thing that I prefer this figure for over the Classics figure is its proportions. Now then, I'm sure you're all wondering why proportion is the deciding factor in my judgment of this figure over the Classics figure. For starters, from what I have seen, the shoulders seem a bit too far apart. They seem to dangle off of the figure like they're floating next to it like Rayman hands, except fully formed as arms, and that just doesn't look right. Second is that the chest is a little too wide. But honestly, that's a problem that the Siege version experiences as well. However, my third and biggest problem is its proportions in terms of its head height. For those of you who are not character designers, you may be wondering what head height is. Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically taking a head, copying it from forehead to chin, and then pasting it alongside the character from top to bottom. As we can see with this chart, the average adult should be about 8 times the size of their own head, while the average child should be around 6 to 7 times as tall. Meanwhile, the superhero should be around 9 to 10 times taller than their own head. Classics Mirage's head height rounded up is about 12.3 times as tall as his own head, 11.3 times excluding the back kibble, while the Siege figure is around 10 times as tall as his own head. However, I don't believe that it's the chest or the legs that are out of proportion here. It is my belief that the parts of the figure that are out of proportion are the waist and the head. The Siege figure has a much larger head, which overall makes it scale much better with its overall body. However, the waist and the head look a little too small, like Mirage accidentally scanned one of the Goombas from the live-action Mario movie. Granted, I still think that the Siege version is a little out of proportion itself, but it's far better than the Classics version. Before anyone says I'm not qualified to talk about this, I actually am. I'm majoring in digital design, I am posting art semi-regularly on Twitter, I've also taken a bunch of art classes and watched a bunch of tutorials online, which is probably the thing that makes me the least qualified to say this, and I have had a bit of experience with character design, as the art here can show you. Granted, my proportions are a bit off with my physical drawings, but I do at least know about proper proportions. Also, every animation that you've seen on the channel so far is my own work, and unfortunately the Siege figure does far better than the Classics one in that regard. However, I feel that in robot mode, the Siege figure looks far better than it does in vehicle mode, and it also looks better than the Classics version. Classics has the superior car mode, Siege has the superior robot mode. That's all I'm going to say in terms of my opinion. And I do feel as though I've been a bit overly harsh on the Classics figure because I don't own that figure, and I cannot say that this is my definitive opinion of the Classics figure because I do not own Classics Mirage. And honestly, I'm content not to. It's just a bit too disproportionate for my tastes. And if you like Classics Mirage, good for you. You appreciate something that I sadly don't. And I do not want to appear as though I'm being a scale fanatic. I am not. I'm merely just here to play with toys and have a fun time with them. And I will give the Classics version this. Everything from the waist down looks fantastic. It's just, he looks like he was wearing a corset that was a bit too tight. However, I am not giving anyone any permission to make fun of someone for liking the Classics figure more than the Siege version. It's just that for me, the Siege version looks far better in robot mode, and really that's the mode I care about more. However, regardless of whether you're a fan of the Classics mold, or the Siege mold, or both, or some other race car Transformer, there's one thing I think we can all agree on. Translucent blue variations of Mirage are stupid.